You're. If I were to ask you, who is the king of rock and roll? Well, if you're above a certain age or aware of the moniker, you may say Elvis Presley, and for good reason. Elvis was born in Mississippi in 1935 and grew into adulthood in Memphis, Tennessee. He uses gyrating hips and country drawl to get your nana out of her drawers, and from jailhouse rock to In the Ghetto, he led the charts. But just like I complain that Eminem can't be the GOAT without understanding his influences and contemporaries, Elvis shouldn't be considered the king of rock and roll without understanding Chuck Berry, who not only had the same charisma of Elvis, but was a more skilled guitar player. The same market forces that provided Caucasian imitators maximum access to American audiences through the most lucrative radio, concert, and recording contracts of the day also fed out whatever crumbs black artists could hope for in the segregated American entertainment business. Elvis just, and I'm going to be polite and say, borrowed from black musicians to develop his style. His brand appreciation, at least at the beginning, was all about being a white man doing black music. But Chuck Berry had a much broader influence on the evolution of rock and roll, but I bring them both up as true usurpers to the throne. The true monarch is Sister Rosetta Tharpe. To say that Elvis and rock and roll took from Chuck Berry really means they took from Sister Rosetta Tharpe, or rather they both did. They're also both creeps and sex pests, but that's for a different video. I want to talk about what happens when an artist transitions into a genre of music stereotypically associated with a different race. And you've obviously seen the thumbnail, so you know I'll be bringing up Post Malone. And to the disingenuous people that are only here to snap on me, I'm not being racist, okay? My wife is white. I can't be racist. And yes, people can make whatever music they want, but when it's a very obvious ploy to get attention, it should be acknowledged and treated as such. Lest I mention how you all acted when Lil Nas X released Old Town Road.
By Lil Nas X, debuting on the Billboard country charts until Billboard pulled it, deciding it wasn't country enough.
When a non-hip hop artist transitions into rap music just to get a check, it feels like they're doing the equivalent of sonic blackface. You'll have an artist that either begins or transitions, usually the latter, into a more hip hop sound and aesthetic, and after they've gotten all they can, they'll bail into another genre, using aforementioned hip hop style, sound, and audience as a period of edginess or revolt. I think Post Malone is a poster child for the switch up, but I'll be using some other examples as well. And before we get started, I actually like Post Malone. I think he makes pretty good music. I just think he never wanted to be a rapper and only used rap and black cosigns as a stepping stone to get to greater fame. And now he's working to distance himself from black culture. Some of these artists, through word or action, actively work to separate themselves from people of color and anything else that could be considered black or gritty. Others will keep whatever image they've cultivated and transition into other venues. The OG of this is Marky Mark. This was before the movie fame, but after the hate crimes. In 1986, a then 15-year-old Wahlberg and three friends were charged for chasing three black children and pelting them with rocks while yelling, "Kill the." The next day, Wahlberg harassed another group of mostly black children around the age of 9 or 10 at the beach, gathering other white men to join in racially abusing and throwing rocks at them. A seemingly unrelated incident occurred 2 years later in 1988 when Wahlberg attacked two Vietnamese men while high on the drug PCP. Yeah, he did that. After all that, he had the audacity to become a rapper, which in the late 80s and early 90s was really a black genre. The fact that Marky Mark types only view hip-hop and black culture by extension as gritty reinforces my point, but I'll get back to that in a minute. Now, why did I tell you all that? Well, to understand a little context. The white artist co-opted a black style and used that style to gain access to a fan base that won't support black artists. That's what Elvis has in common with the artists I'll be bringing up today. A portion of their audience wouldn't support a black or brown person performing the same music. That and latent racism, but that's a different topic. The issue I'm referring to today is the idea of black culture being something edgy, like a spiked leather jacket to take on and off as a musician sees fit. And I'll get to Post Malone in a minute, but since he's been in the news recently, I'm going to use Justin Timberlake as a quick example. Now, most of y'all are old enough to remember peak NSYNC and then a later launch into success of Justin Timberlake. But on top of being a talented vocalist, JT had the support of top-tier producer Timbaland, whose hip-hop credentials lent itself to pop music and artists that wanted to lean into a more R&B style. Justin Timberlake used that new style and soaked up the JT can come to the cookout jokes because for some reason, anytime a white person is vaguely successful doing something stereotypically black, they're praised with jokes. JT fed off his pseudo R&B alignment until it began to lose relevance. Then of course he announced he was going back to his roots, changing his aesthetic to this watered down suburban Americana with patriotic imagery and a more country twang in his voice and music. Something, mind you, that was never part of his brand. So how can you go back to something that was never part of your brand unless you were using it as a statement of to where he was going to realign himself? What you see here is using blackness as a commodity, which is a world of different from non-black artists that create music that truly speak to them. The Great White Hope is a great example of the latter. Eminem is someone that has been hip-hop his entire career, and when an album tanked, he didn't go to country or pop. He went back to the booth to create a better album. Shady has never turned his back on hip-hop to do a single with Garth Brooks or Toby Keith, but I'll be going into him in my next video, so make sure you subscribe so you're alerted when that drops. Here is where I want to bring in Post Malone. Now, Post is an interesting example of an artist doing blended music. Getting his start in heavy metal, he soon transitioned into hip-hop sounds blended with a drawl he developed from his time in living in Texas. It was his 2015 track, White Iverson, that really launched him in the public spotlight, which, compared to his first album titled Stony, is a masterpiece. The rest of that initial album, while competent, is just okay, but it sets a tone regarding what you could expect from Post Malone going forward. What I gather from going back and listening to these albums is that Post has never been afraid of exploring genres, but as I say that, I don't think he was ever serious or committed to hip hop or to culture. Note, when I say culture, I mean a deeper understanding of his roots in various styles. There is more variation within hip hop than you'll find in country or pop music because of the acceptance of variation and with it, outsiders who bring in a little flavor. And that's the problem. Regardless of jokes, if you step into the rap game and you're talented and committed to improving your craft, you can earn a spot or rather the acclaim from rap fans and other rappers. That cannot be said for Black huge Seven Dust fan back in the day when I was going through my little rock era. And I remember the condescending remarks from some of the other rock fans. Oh, Seven Dust wasn't a real band for various vague reasons, but it was always clear what they really meant. The band's drummer Morgan Rose recalled one of the first incidents of racism they had to deal with as a band. Seven Dust drummer Morgan Rose said his first experience with racism with the band was during a show in Phoenix when some concert goers threw rocks at the stage and started making the salute. The incident happened during the Tattoo the Earth tour in the early 2000s, and he said that similar things have happened a few times. Now I want you to imagine that happening to Eminem early in his career. Hell, Vanilla Ice didn't deal with that and he was a straight up plant. But black artists are really afforded the luxury that white artists have when playing with sound and style. That's what I'd like to have acknowledged. There are probably hundreds of thousands of people that would put Post Malone on their favorite rapper list, but I'm not even sure he would put himself on a rapper list. It's been clear since 2016 that Post didn't have any interest in being a rapper when he turned down a spot on XXL's freshman class cover page. It says something that Designer was there and not Post Malone. Designer.
Stop Brooklyn. You already know how we do it. Hey.
In an interview with DJ Envy, XXL editor-in-chief Vanessa Satin explained why Post Malone was not included. She stated, "We were told by his camp that he wasn't paying attention to hip-hop so much. He was going into a more rock, pop, country direction." Post later denied the claim, stating he was making hip-hop music, which, I mean, his music definitely has his hip-hop influences. He hasn't escaped critique, though. Some rappers have accused Post of being a culture vulture, and he's made some red flag comments that often come from pseudo-hip-hop fans when they want to prove a point. During an interview with GQ, he was quoted as saying, "I definitely feel there's a struggle being a white rapper. But I don't want to be a rapper," he continued. "I just want to be a person that makes music. I make music that I like and I think kicks ass, that I think people who fuck with me as a person and as an artist will like." So it's rough being a white rapper, but he also doesn't want to be a rapper. And that comment right there is why it's hard on white rappers, because of the racial invasion that some of them engage in when it comes to social issues that impact black folks, or in the case of Post Malone, disowning rap when convenient. There's also a problem with white rappers who enter the realm and conflate all types of hip-hop and artists that would create what would be considered conscious music with those that don't. In another interview, this time with Polish media outlet Nuance, Malone was quoted in saying that modern hip-hop lacks people talking about real shit, and added that if you're looking to think about life, don't listen to hip-hop. It sounds like what Post is saying to an international audience is, don't listen to hip-hop unless it's him, because he's bringing back some sort of lost authenticity. He later tried to backtrack the comments, stating that he was referring to finding some music that speaks to him, and when that's the case, it usually isn't hip-hop. So what does that say about his music unless he doesn't consider it hip-hop, which he clearly doesn't? As his stardom reaches its peak, what type of music is Post making? Who is he collaborating with? Well, he recently featured on Beyonce's Cowboy Carter and, Texas Love and all that. And he also did a track with Morgan Wallen, who was caught on camera slinging an N-word like it was going out of style. I don't think it's unfair to criticize someone based on the company they keep. You align yourself with a racist, I'm gonna think you're a little racist. Being a white rapper doesn't make you a culture vulture, but being an ass with no intention on developing your craft does. And speaking of craft,
speaking in vague obscurities, leeching off insecurities, hang off vines of excuses, they useless when not rinsed thoroughly. Staying stuck but with urgency is my anguish, my only currency. All I know is love is the motif.
Marlon Craft is a good example of a rapper just doing his thing and going about his grind, and unless he pulls out a guitar and a Leonard Skinner shirt and says he's going back to his roots, I think he's going to be cool. Ditto for Action Bronson, and the same went for Mac Miller before his passing. No one is saying these musicians can't step into different genres, but it's offensive to use what you can to garner more attention and bail. If urban culture is what you really like, and you really want to rap, and what you display is really who you are, by all means do you. But if it's not, just